I'm talking and you can't hear because the volume was down. Good morning. Welcome to another exciting, hopefully exciting, reading of English Journey by J.B. Priestley. And I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer. This is my daily 9:30 slot where I read to you. Sorry about that. You were all going, wait, we can't hear him. We can't hear the bugger. What's he on about? But I've managed to get the microphone up, so there we go. If you are watching, can I say hello to Audrey? There's no sound, says Ramiboo. That got you to say something. Hello to Audrey, hello to Sarah, hello to John, hello to Ramiboo, and hello to Terrier82 Box Hill. Good morning to you all. Yeah, sorry about the lack of sound there at the beginning. It was a test. That was a test. You all did very well in that test, I have to say. We're going to do another little reading from English Journey, as I say. And as you know, I've been reading from this paperback book. And as you know, also, if you have been following me, the book is quite ancient and has been collapsing. Well, I took the prudent steps of ordering a hardback version. And I'm thrilled to say the hardback version of English Journey has arrived. Not only is it a hardback version, there we are, J.B. Priestley, look at that. It came yesterday afternoon. It comes in this delightful sleeve to keep it in good shape. It's a lovely hardback version. And it's got photographs on with some of the pictures. Now, he didn't take the pictures at the time. I don't think he took a photographer with him, but other people have submitted pictures. I guess the editor has gone around and submitted pictures to give you an idea of the imagery of what we have been reading. Excuse me. So I just was trying to look at pictures for where we were yesterday when we were on the Tyne. And I just thought I'd very briefly show you, if I can, with the webcam here, just some of those images that we saw, that we were reading about. And I mean, I don't know how much you remember of it. This is obviously a train going over a bridge over the Tyne. There's a lot of text, of course, because it is provisionally not a picture book. Here, we see anything? A Butterfly of the Back Streets, 1936, photo by Edward Smith. The type of housing, man reading the paper, the washing out. This is down at the dockyard. I guess he was saying how pitiful the dockyards were. Very few buildings going on, but there, the size of the ships gives you an indication. It is a beautiful book, yes, absolutely. Morning to the lovely Julia. How are you this morning? This is a nice picture here with the mangle outside the house. And no attempt at paintwork. And the kids running around. Absolutely. Here, women, baskets on their head, shawls on, walking up a street. Desolate. There's obviously a building was here. Another desolate street with somebody's washing on this walkway that people are quite happily walking through. And down here, a little, what is that? A dog? A cat? Not sure what that is. It looks like a pig. Unfortunately, it's printed on glossy paper, which... What is that? Is that a cat? It's a very strange looking animal, anyway. I think there's just one more. Sorry about the camera. I'm just trying to turn the pages. And this one here, Unemployed Tyneside, 1936. People in their hats and what have you. So yeah, that's nice, really, to have that sort of reference, really, from photographs. Anyway, You're envious of the book. I know it's a fantastic book, Audrey. Good morning to Ramibu. Hello to Mike Barak, or Barak, is it? Good morning from Seattle. Love the readings. I'm so pleased. Thank you so much. The Loco Fern Church is being overhauled, so it will work. Okay, where is the Fern Church stationed? Terrier 82 Box Hill. Steve Naylor, good morning. Richard, love the hardback version of English Journey. It looks to be in excellent condition. It is an excellent. Well, I also wanted, I've got this plan that maybe, possibly next year now, I would go and follow in his footsteps. And I was talking about this in my podcast I do for my patrons. And I think it would be good to probably take a month, 2 months to do that. Take 4 to 8 weeks off and follow in the footsteps and do it properly and make it into a long format series of long format things. It would be an amazing project. So one would need to plan it and try and raise some money to do it and go and look at these places. But also, I think it would be lovely to go not only to the exact same places that he went, but also, take advantage of the fact that you're travelling across up and down, the advantage of the villages and the local area as well, and the landscape, and make short 10-minute, 15-minute walks and exploration videos, as I normally do, as whilst working on this. So you'd spend, you'd split the day up in different ways, of course, and you'd end up with the official long format version, but also you'd be still putting out content every day, which would show the sort of behind the scenes and the locality. So that would be quite nice. That's what I feel. Good morning, J.W. Harville. Nice to see you there. James Gilbert, morning. Richard, it's great to revisit Priestley's book. It made me think of Orwell's Journey to Wigan Pier. Yes, I must read that. A book of Orwell that I enjoyed very much was Coming Up for Air, a lesser known of his books, Coming Up for Air, which is a brilliant book. On the Bluebell Railway, says Terrier. Thank you very much. Bluebell herself is my favourite locomotive, says Julia. Good morning from Cave Wetter from New Zealand. So that's it. Andy Stacey, good morning to you. Okay. Now I'm going to see how easier it is to read from the larger book with larger print than it is with the little one with pages that are falling out. So I'm hoping that I do not ruin this. The only thing that I get with these bigger, nicer produced is they do print on glossy pages. I don't know why they print on glossy pages, because I've got a light up here enabling me to read, but you get that sheen, which I would rather they printed on quality, but matte finish paper would be better. But we'll see how we go. Anyway, take a slurp of this. So this is chapter 13, to East Durham. On a morning, entangled in light mist under a sullen sky, I left the Tyne by road for East Durham. Most of us have often crossed this country of Durham to and from Scotland. We are well acquainted with the fine, grim aspects of the city of Durham, with that baleful, dark bulk of castle, which at a distance makes the city look like some place in a Gothic tale of blood and terror. The romantic traveller, impressed by the Macbeth look of the city, will be well advised not to get out of his train at Durham station. Some of us, wise or lucky, know West Durham, especially Weardale and Teesdale, which are very beautiful, rocks and heather, glens and streams flashing through the golden woods. As a woman might keep a wedding dress, so I keep the bright thought of that northern countryside by me, occasionally taking it out to make sure that I still have it and that its enchantment has not faded. But who knows East Durham? The answer is nobody but the people who have to live and work there, and a few others who go there on business. It is, you see, a coal mining district, Unless we happen to be connected in some way with a colliery, we do not know these districts. They are usually unpleasant or rather remote, so we leave them alone. Of the millions in London, how many have ever spent half an hour in a mining village? How many newspaper proprietors, newspaper editors, newspaper readers have ever had 10-minute talk with a miner? How many members of Parliament could even give the roughest description of the organisation and working of a coal mine? How many voters could answer the simple questions about the hours of work and average earnings of a miner? These are not idle queries. I wish they were. If they had been, England would have been much merrier than it is now. Most English people know as little about coal mining as they do about diamond mining. Probably less, because they may have been sufficiently interested to learn a little about so romantic a trade as diamond mining. Who wants to know about coal? Who wants to know anything about miners, except when an explosion kills or entombs a few of them, and they become news? The railway and motor coach companies do not run popular excursions to mining districts. Pitmen are not familiar figures in the streets of our large cities. The mining communities are remote, hidden away, mysterious. If there had been several working collieries in London itself, modern English history would have been quite different. For example, we should not have had the general strike of 1926. But there are no collieries in London, or very near it, and nobody goes to see, well, East Durham. I'd never seen it before, although I'd often been quite near to it. I didn't really want to see it now, for I knew that it would be ugly, and I'd had enough of ugliness. But I felt that I should be a fraud on this particular journey if I went sneaking past East Durham. Several times before, during the journey in Nottingham, Stafford and West Riding and Lancashire, I'd been on the edge of mining districts, but so far I'd kept out of them. Here was my chance to visit an area, so far as it was industrial at all, that was a mining area and nothing else. I had to have one good stare at it. So there I was, on the Sunderland road. We passed over the high-level bridge at Sunderland, and I caught a glimpse of the misty weir far below. It was not exactly crowded with shipping, though there is, I believe, considerable unemployment and distress in the town. It looked fairly prosperous, clean, bright that morning. There are a lot of Jews in Sunderland, and on the way we passed a large synagogue, which looked as strangely out of place as a herd of camels would have done. Along the coast road between Sunderland and Seaham Harbour, we came upon a number of men riding wheeling bicycles loaded with 2 or 3 small sacks of coal. I heard afterwards that these men descend very steep and dangerous cliffs near Seaham Harbour to pick up coal from the shore. They were now going to Sunderland to sell the coal. Those people who still believe that working folk of this country live in an enervating atmosphere of free bread and circuses might like to try this coal-picking enterprise for a day or two, just to discover if it is their idea of fun. To some of us it hints at desperation. When a drudging and chancy job of this kind is popular in a neighbourhood, it is reasonable to suppose that conditions are anything but easy in that part of the world. Seaham Harbour itself is like no other town I've ever seen. It is a colliery town on the coast. It looks weird as a cart horse with scales and fins. Its position on the edge of the sea did not relieve it of any of the usual dreariness of colliery towns. In fact, to my eyes, it seemed drearier than the ordinary inland mining towns, perhaps because the coast itself there has a dirty and depressing look. The sea was dingy and had somehow lost its usual adventurous escaping quality. You could not believe that by setting sail on that sea, you could get anywhere in particular. It was not the kind of sea you wanted to bathe in. Perhaps in the summer it looks different, altogether more inviting. But I do not find it easy to imagine that district in sunshine and under a soft June sky. When I saw it, winter had set in and apparently taken possession forever. The town is almost entirely composed of miners' cottages laid in dreary, monotonous rows. They're all so small that they are made the whole look of the town diminutive, as if only playing in a miserable fashion at being a town. You saw at a glance that there were very little money about. A couple of shillings here were obviously having to go a long way. The persistent legends about miners who buy 2 pianos at once and insist upon drinking champagne would shrivel up and utterly vanish within 5 seconds here. I've never heard that legend. There was a place when an old mouth organ or concertina would have to do. Oh, sorry, this was a place when there was an old mouth organ or concertina would have to do. And you would be lucky to get a beer. Not that I ever understood the wild imagination of those comfortable middle-class people who, at one time, went about telling us that miners had been seen drinking champagne. A man who has been working for several hours at the coalface, crouching in a horribly cramped space for about half a mile underground, has a right, if anyone has, to choose his own tipple. I, for one, would be delighted if I knew that miners could afford to drink champagne and were drinking it. Horatio Bottomley and his friends, we are told, drank champagne all day for years, and nobody protested, though Bottomley and his kind never filled anybody's coal scuttle, only emptied it, and probably never honestly earned for themselves a bottle of stout, let alone cases and cases of champagne. As for Seaham Harbour, it looked as if it could do with, and was not having, that bottle of stout. The town itself was undernourished. There is no mystery about this. It's a mining town, and all its citizens are being shockingly underpaid. They earn about £2 a week, with luck. A great many of them find that their week's money is nearer 30 shillings than 40. A town on these wages is not a pretty sight. Just have a slurp of coffee, if that's all right. Just say hello to a few extra people. Brian Mountney has just caught up finally. Thank you, Brian. Nice to see you there. Rami Boo, you missed Terrier's first message. That Bluebell Railway is turning 60. Oh, did I? I'm sorry. Yes, is it turning 60? Wow. Michael Angel, hello to you. Just finished watching The Daily Walk. Thank you very much. Are we on a different book, or it's just a new binding? It's a hardback version of the same book. The other one was falling to bits, so I've got this rather luscious hardback version, which was it was second-hand. I tend to buy second-hand books, but it was a little expensive. But I thought it was worth buying a nice one, even though I'm close to the end of it, because it's got photos in it. We've shown some of those photos already, but also I can use it. The other one would end up in the bin. I think it's just so beyond looking after. Whereas this one I can use for when and if I do a walking in Priestley's footsteps, which I would like to do. A large hardback copy that came in a sleeve with nice pictures in it. Yes, absolutely. Rita Loy, I was waiting and this didn't show up after 5 minutes. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why YouTube doesn't tell everybody. It's one of those things. But thank you very much for coming anyway. Quick slurp of coffee. The trouble is, the coffee, if I drink coffee when I'm reading, it just goes cold. And Julia will tell you, I'm somebody who likes my hot drinks hot, and I don't like them warm or cold. I like them hot, and so they do go. I tend to waste a lot of them if they get cold. I went first to Seaham Harbour chiefly because it has a particularly good settlement, directed by Miss Jowett. I heard a lot about Miss Jowett when I was in Gateshead, where she was engaged in this work for about 10 years. These settlements, or community houses, are not being run by people who are being elaborately good or poor. There is about them no Fairchild family atmosphere. Older readers of this book who do not happen to be acquainted with our distressed industrial areas will do well here if they recall the war years. In those unhappy districts there is a war on, and the Allied enemies are poverty, idleness, ignorance, hopelessness, and misery. East Durham, like the Tyne, is one of the liveliest fronts. The storm troops of decency and justice and knowledge and civilization go up there. These settlement houses are their advance posts. The people who are attached to them receive very little money, live very frugally in the ugliest and most depressing surroundings, and work at least 12 hours a day. They are the people who know that there is a war on, a war that means something and that will not end in any Versailles Treaty. Even yet, England is a country that has far more than its fair share of persons who have regular incomes, people of independence and private means. Men and women, more often than not, live modestly in the country, and when they are not beagling or fishing, are probably yawning their heads off, wondering what to do with themselves, and sometimes wishing that there was something more than unknown second-class passengers in the ship of state. I suggest if some of these people would also realise that there is a war on, that they could too do some bonny fighting in it, they would soon be busier and more useful and happier. And if any reader thinks that this is a priggish suggestion and that the writer of these chapters is rapidly turning himself into a prig as the book grows, I can only ask the reader, before finally passing judgment, to make that same journey that I have made. A few days in the northeastern England will do the trick, and after that, if there's any more talk from that reader about priggishness and sentimentality, he or she should go to Madame Tussauds and be asked to be given permanent place and attitude among the other wax dummies. Once inside the advance post, the settlement once inside that advance post, the settlement house I stayed on there, not taking note of what they're doing, for their activities were like elsewhere, but listening and talking to the frontline troops. It would be a poor return for their hospitality and good-natured acceptance of my intrusion into their busy lives if I began to sketch them here as if they were so many minor characters in a novel. I will only say that I was immensely impressed by them all, and especially by the wise and gracious woman who was their captain, by their fresh-faced young man who had come from another part of the country to take classes in economics and history, though I told him that lectures on economics here seemed imprudence, by the librarian who had been a miner himself for years and told me a great deal that I didn't know, by the German woman who had come to organise the music and teach its rudiments. She solemnly declared, unless my memory is playing a trick, that these Durham folk were more musical by nature, if not by tradition, than the people in her German town. And by the enthusiastic young man who ran the dramatic side, though his enthusiasm for drama in almost any decent form seemed to be shared by all the others, probably because it provided an escape from the dreary chaos into a tiny world where everything is artfully coloured, shaped, and made significant. There was such a rushing stream of talk that it is difficult to remember a tenth of what was said, but much of what follows I gathered from them, though, as my own impressions are by no means left out, I must take the responsibility. So, protest if you must to me. Protest if you must to me, and do not disturb those busy folk in their advance post at Seaham Harbour. And I'm just going to show you a picture, because we come up to a picture here of East Durham landscape, 1936. let the camera focus. And of course, this is that's better. Big hill there with wires on it taking, I guess, I don't know whether that's a hill or a slag heap or whatever, in an old house there on the street. Quite nice to see the pictures. The first impression of my own was that instantly confirmed was that of the strange isolation of this mining community. Nobody, as I have observed earlier, goes to East Durham. The miner here lives in his own little world and hardly ever meets anybody coming from outside it. He sees far less of the ordinary citizen than a soldier or sailor does. I've often heard people say that the miners are indifferent to the welfare of the country at large, caring for nobody but themselves. I doubt if this is any truer of them than it is of any other member of a trade or profession. I've sometimes wondered if the legal profession could be said to think of the public before it thinks of itself. Yeah, good point. The monstrous cost of litigation, for example, does not suggest any marked altruism. But even if the charge were true, there would be every excuse for the miner. Indeed, I cannot blame him if he detested the whole coal-burning public. He is isolated geographically. More often than not, he lives in a region so unlovely, so completely removed from either natural beauty or anything of grace or dignity contrived by man, that most of us take care never to go near a colliery area. The time he does not spend underground is spent in towns and villages that are monuments of mean ugliness. I shall be told by some people that this doesn't matter because miners, having not known anything else, are entirely indifferent and impervious to such ugliness. But I believe this view to be false as it is mean. Miners and their wives and children are not members of some troglodyte race, but ordinary human beings, and as such are partly at the mercy of their surroundings. I do not want to pretend that they are wincing wincing ascetics, unnerved by a certain shade of green and sent into ecstasies by a particular pink, but the channel of the senses that are open to them, just as they are to the rest of us, the channel of the senses are open to them just as they are to the rest of us. Their environment must either bring them to despair, as I know from my own experience that it frequently does, or, in the end, it must blunt their senses and taste, harden the feelings, and cloud the mind. And the latter is a tragic process which nothing that calls itself a democratic civilization has any right to encourage. Let us rid ourselves once and for all of all this familiar, fallacious and despicable getting used to argument, which even now some people use to preserve their own mental comfort at other people's expense. Interesting, he says that, the getting used to. It's like with this current lockdown situation, you'd imagine that the government will go, oh, well, they're getting used to it now, so we can extend it. And, I think that's a true statement there. Let's rid ourselves once and for all of this familiar, fallacious, and despicable getting used to argument, which even now some people use to preserve their own mental comfort at other people's expense. It's a good point. We know that man is one of the most adaptable of creatures. He can exist in deep cage, up in the treetops, or in the snow and ice, by feeding on nothing but blubber or raw fish and coconut, by wandering naked in tropical jungles, or sewing himself up in the skins of the Arctic darkness. He has been known to exist for years and years, shut up in iron cages or perched on the top of pillars. He can make some sort of shift to live without eyes or legs or arms. No doubt man can get used to almost anything. But what, in the name of justice, has this to do with us? There have been civilizations of a kind that were deliberately planned so that a few persons could live like demigods, while the rest of us toiled as their slaves, with no human rights as human beings. No rights as human beings. That is not our plan. It is to us an impossible civilization, if only because our demigods would soon begin to think about the slaves, and the more they are worth working for, and the more anxious they would be to associate themselves with their less fortunate fellow creatures. We are on a better and another road. We are not so far along it as we generally pretend to be, but we are there. And every time one of us complacently announce that people can get used to notoriously bad conditions of work and living, he or she has taken a step back. Even if the people in question are adapting themselves to a dwarfing and distorting mode of life, it is our business to try and put a stop to the miserable process. If we do not choose to do this, then let us at least be honest and bold, and instead of being smooth and glib about people getting used to things, say boldly, well, I don't care a damn them all. I'm all right. Yeah, then you might as well say that, mightn't you? I'm guessing a slightly larger type and better spelling on white paper, says Nigel. It is bigger. It's still not ideal, because it's on glossy paper, and the glare from the light, which is why I'm having to hold it in such a way as to try and read it a bit better. Your miner, then, is isolated, remote from the rest of the community, and generally in unpleasant surroundings, living in the beastliest towns and villages in the country. He sees little or nothing of you or me. On the other hand, he sees a great deal of his fellow miners. They work together in an arduous and dangerous trade in which they have to depend on one another for such safety that they have. The risks are still much greater than most people suppose, only the more spectacular tragedies taking up much space in the newspapers. During the 5 years ending with 1931, more than 5,000 people were killed in the coal mining industry, and more than 800,000 were injured. It was estimated that in 1932, nearly 1 in 5 persons employed underground was injured. The women in a mining village live forever in the anxious atmosphere of war years. Sorry, there's a picture to show you. Nearly forgot. Try and get the focus on this. Here we got the miners presumably coming out from, I guess, the elevator that lifts them up and down the mine, looking a bit weary and still wearing their hats and heavy clothes. You can see the sheen there, that the glare, the sheen from the thing. At any moment they may find themselves running, these are the women, finding themselves running, half demented, to the pit head. Every man and boy who goes underground knows only too well that he risks one of several peculiar, horrible deaths, from being roasted to being imprisoned in the rock and slowly suffocated. We must not make too much of this. Doing a grim, dangerous, necessary job frequently brings out its own mental reward. You know, even if a lot of other people don't, that you are somebody. It's not a matter of swaggering. The deep satisfaction probably comes from being completely and severely tested, and from being saved from the dull folly of taking existence for granted. Actually, miners in this country are not swaggering at all. Not, that is, queer miners? Not quite sure what that means. QUA, queer miners. I've talked to dozens of them, and I have heard them boast about beer, women, football, whippets, fighting, and various other things, and I have never heard one of them so much as suggest that he was a brave fellow because he worked in a tiny, dangerous place far underground. It would, I think, never occur to him that he was. He takes the risks and his own fortitude for granted. That, however, is no reason why we should. There are probably two reasons why we do tend to do it. The first is that most of us never see anything of colliery life. The second is that there are so many miners. If there were only 10 men in the country allowed to go down and work at the coalface instead of thousands, those 10 men would probably be regarded as national heroes and be given medals. As it is, the miner is one of the most overworked and deplorably underpaid men in the country. I call him overworked, although he may be spending 2 or 3 days a week in compulsory idleness, because the output of coal per shift expected of him is much larger than it used to be, and if he earned twice as much as he does now, he would still be underpaid. I know very well that if your supply of coal depended on my walking several miles to a pit head, descending in a cage for half a mile, walking again to the dwindling tunnel where I had to work, then slogging away for about 7 hours in that hell, all for something like £2 a week, your grates would be empty. People could preach, sorry, such an itchy nose, people could preach economic necessity at me until they were blue in the face, but I would not go down. Unless, of course, we all have to go down. Suppose we had a government that was announcing coal is a national necessity, but it is unjust that one class of men should do this hard and dangerous work at starvation wages. During the war, we had conscription. We will now have conscription again, but this time for the coal mines, where every able-bodied man will take a turn at the usual rates of pay. All men in the Mayfair, Belgravia, Bayswater, Kensington areas who have received Form 5673D will report themselves to the King's Cross and St Pancras Station on Tuesday next for colliery duty. What a glorious shindy there would be then! And if you could buy yourself out of the subsiding in a professional miner, how the wages of East Durham would rise. Yes, absolutely. And here is a lovely picture of what have we got here? Pithead conservation piece. I guess these are miners, but posing rather miner-like. There they are. Look at those faces, with their pipes and hats and jackets and lamps and everything. It's great, isn't it? I love it. I love it. I love it because I don't have to do it. Never had to do it. Never had to go down a mine. You can respect the people who did and the hard lives that they've had. So have a look at some of the comments. Based on a mistaken belief. How do you pronounce it? Fallacious. Sometimes. A Harcliffe. Never walk there. A Harcliffe? That's no, I just said I'm guessing. Oh yes, I read that bit. Probably one of the worst jobs in the world, digging coal, spending every day in darkness, says Michael Angel. Yeah, I would agree with you there. Ramibu, in Roman mythology and religion, queerness. I can't. When Wikipedia does that Latin stuff, I can't read. I have no way of interpreting that. It's even harder. Phonetically would be better for me if you're trying to show me how to pronounce something. Is an early god of the Roman state in Augustan Rome. Diane Patterson, miners, choir miners as miners. Oh, and how do you pronounce that? QUA. How is that pronounced? As in key? Is it key miners? Kia miners? How is that pronounced? That would be. I'd love to know how that is pronounced. Linda Kane, why oh why does it reset to the top chat instead of the live chat? Yes, I know that is a pain. I've now make myself do it every day to check that it is the correct one. J.W. Harville, what he wrote then applies to a lot of what's going now, except in industries like grocery stores and industries in the US right now. Oh, really? That's interesting. Stephen Ruff, methinks that the paperback edition finally gave up the ghost and disintegrated. It's still here. It's still in some sort of tack, and actually, I could read from there, but this has got pictures in it. This is it came yesterday, and it's very much coveted. If it is a key minor, it is pronounced the same way as key minors. Oh, right. It's QUA is the spelling. Yeah. Oh, fallacious. Fallacious. Thank you. Linda Kane, key WA. Yeah. How do you pronounce key WA? Qua minors? Ramaboo. Oh, fallacious. Okay. Minus qua. Pronounce. Oh, qua. Quar. Qua. Is it qua minors? You learn something, don't we? This is what I love. This communal knowledge coming together. Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Qua minors. Qua minors. Pronounce qua. Right. Okay. Sorry you have an idiot here who is a little ignorant on these things. I apologise for that. Doing my best, but learning at the same time. So that's really nice. Let's just see where there's a stopping point. Oh, yes, here there's a stopping point coming up. So we'll get to there. Where are we? It's at 10:15. So I've got to go just put a check in the bank. If the bank is open. Did I read up to here? I can't remember. Yes. Even in East Durham, however, the mining communities are not so completely isolated as they were. Road transport is breaking down that isolation, and so, I imagine, is the work of the settlements, where the intelligent pitmen can now learn a great deal about the rest of the world. There is a widening gulf between the sort of men who can make use of the settlements and the various educational and cultural schemes, and the men who are not interested, who try to carry on in the same fashion, who would more or less resemble the miner of the popular imagination. Betting is still one of the chief resources of this latter type of Durham pitman, as it is, of course, of the vast number of working men all over the country. Lack of money has reduced the size of the bets, but not, I suspect, the frequency. It is a fact that men who are not working, who sit indoors most of the day because a walk would make them hungry, men who are definitely undernourished, will still make their bets, though only in coppers. We should not be surprised at this, any more than we need to be surprised to learn that people who are short of food and clothes will yet spend money going to the cinema. It seems all wrong according to the scale of values of cheerful, well-nourished persons, but people who are feeling depressed, perhaps hopeless, do not have the same scale of values. To them, the cinema offers them a few hours of escape from their lives, which have begun to look like prisons. I've never done much betting or gambling myself, not because I think it wrong, but because the excitement it offers is nothing new to me, for my whole life as an author is half a game of chance, and every book or play I write is in itself a gamble. But it does not require great effort of the imagination to understand the attraction of betting for a man who is leading a miserably drab and confined existence. He can spare the sixpence. There is the fun of deciding on his horse, the greyhound or the football team. There is the excitement of the race or the match, even though he is not there himself. And there is the possibility of winning 10 or 20 sixpences. I think the man is a fool simply because I know very well that he will lose far more than he will ever win, but that is not really getting value for the money but he is not really, and that he's not really getting value for the money of all the sixpences he's lost. But he is not a fool past my comprehension. But he is not a fool past my comprehension. I think every man on the dole or on short time or cut wages, and especially a man with a wife and child, should be told quite firmly that he cannot afford to make bets, and that he's indulging his idiocy at the expense of the folk that depend on him. The law, as we know, does everything to make his betting difficult for him, but probably the best method of curing him, for he is almost sure to be a childish fellow, nothing but an overgrown schoolboy, is to destroy this legend of sportsmanship that is still associated with the habit of losing money to bookmakers. England is a country that officially discourages betting and gambling, and at the same time socially encourages them with these popular ideas of sporting life. A working class that takes its scale of values from that of the 18th century squires is obviously heading straight for the gutter. Somebody ought to write a book tracing in detail the workings of the aristocratic land-owning tradition in the present day, tracing in detail the workings of an aristocratic land-owning tradition in the present-day English social life. Even the Durham miner could be in that book, but not the miners who make use of the lectures and courses and the books offered to them by the settlement and the community houses. They are looking a lot further than the world in which the height of a successful achievement is represented by a Derby winner. Slurp of water. I met some of their wives sitting around a fire in a sewing circle. They were worn but neat and smiling women, mostly on the small side. Their frank talk about men's wages was not pleasant to listen to. They were glad to see me, and were neither resentful nor whining, but nevertheless they made me feel like a fat rich man. And I object to feeling like a fat rich man. That is yet another reason why we must clean up this horrible dingy muddle of life. Nobody can be happy in it, for only an insensitive person can be oblivious to it, and I cannot see how anybody so thick and numbed can know real happiness. I will make this a personal protest. After all, this is my journey and my book. As an unusually hard-working, anxious author, heavily loaded with responsibilities, an atlas of a scribbler, I object to the state of things that can make me feel, even for a moment, like a fat, rich man. I ought to have more sense and keep away from the place, more from that circle of women sewing on the razor edge of life. Most of my fellow authors do not go blundering in like that. They never go near these uncomfortable places. They continue writing their charming stories about love affairs that begin in a nice country house and then flare up into purple passages in large hotels in Cannes. They have some sense, and so never feel like fat rich men. The younger women among those miners' wives were emphatic on one subject. Their sons were not going into the pits. No more coal mining in the family for them. And when a North Country woman begins a statement with "my lad" in that tone of voice, you may depend upon it that unless her lad is particularly obstinate, he will not do what she says he must not do. In these parts, the women have far more influence than they would appear to have at first. There is a matriarchal principle at work here. It is generally assumed that among them, that although the men have the muscle and perhaps for contriving, arguing, book-learning purposes, the brains, women have the sense, the gumption. I take this to be Shakespeare's view of the sexes and the best one going. If these women have definitely decided against the mines, thereby probably breaking a family tradition, there'll soon be a lot of young men in East Durham looking for other kinds of work. It's not because the pitman's life is hard and dangerous. These women, the wives and daughters of pitmen, and perhaps I ought to explain here that in Durham collieries are always pits and miners pitmen, know all about that and are ready to take the chance their mothers took too. But they see no reason why their lads should work in the pits for wages that look more like pocket money than real pay. Can you blame them? For my part, I didn't find them resentful enough, though no doubt the less resigned spirits among them do not favour sewing circles. I'm always hearing middle-class women in London saying that they could do with a change. They could try being a miner's wife in East Durham. That would be a change. So, yeah, oh, wow, how about that? And searching for coal in East Durham. Kids, here. Sorry about that sheen. You see what I mean about the sheen? It's annoying. On some slag heap or on some ground or something. 1936, that was photographed. So we'll continue our book. We'll continue the reading tomorrow. I need to find something to shove in there so I don't lose the space. But yes, a lovely book. And actually, it's embossed there. I don't know if you can see that. It's embossed with 1933 on it as well. All over the place. 1933. It's a great. It's a great. It's like a census taking, isn't it? It's like a doomsday, a snapshot of the industrial countryside, the amount of people out of working, and it comes in this rather lovely sleeve to keep it nice, with the pictures of the houses and the smoking chimneys on the cover, which is and on the back. I do feel that the book could also have been called A Journey Round the Industrial Parts of England. But I think that was his whole point, wasn't it? It was that England was in a slump in 1933, and so I suppose he was trying to see not what the rich people were doing in their farms and the squires on their land and all of that. He wanted to see what the mass populace was up to and the pitiful state of the country, I guess. Let's just quickly go through some of the... Why is that? Where is the mouse? Oh, there it is. K and key are pronounced the same here. Oh, key and key. Oh, okay. It's pronounced fallacious. Fallacious. It means fallacy. Fallacious. Fallacious. I thought that's what I said. Fallacious. Fallacious. Something like that. Nigel Sadler says, but there will come a point where it is no longer economic to extract it. Well, I imagine it must be more done by machine now, isn't it? Less people, fewer men are required down there, I would have thought. Audrey Forbes Hamilton, I recommend Itchy Boots video series, episode 2, 61, to see the terrible plight of Bolivian silver miners. Can't believe people still work in those conditions. Oh, right. Yeah, I guess people still do it, don't they? Out of necessity. You wouldn't do it unless you had to, I guess. James Gilbert says, by the way, there is a phone app for paying in checks these days. Oh, is there? How marvellous is that? A phone app for paying in checks. Oh, right. I will take my little stroll down there just to have a bit of exercise, but that's fascinating. I would have to check that. Thanks, James. Grocery store and fast food has to be the lowest wages in the country, but are considered essential on the same level as the healthcare industry, but they aren't offered any more form of personal protection. Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, you go into the supermarkets, for example, and they're not really wearing protection. Key is not the same as cure. All right. Linda Kane, not sure that anybody uses it nowadays in passing conversation. No, probably not. I'd never come across it for myself. But no per Google, that is how you pronounce it. Linda Kane, apologies. Missed a couple of posts, was making a cup of tea. Don't blame you. Have you made me a cup of tea, Linda Kane? Can't multitask, she says. That they used to scavenge for coal on the beach here in the south. We do still get bits of coal, sea coal, coming up, and I have scavenged for it, and I've tried to burn it, but it wasn't much cop. I think with the salt water didn't help. So that's good. Julia's saying, who is admin here anyway? I'm not quite sure. And Fiona, sorry, got to go. Great reading, Richard. Look forward to the reading every morning. Bye for now. Oh, bye-bye. Many people have forgotten that Kent was a major coal-producing area. Yeah, I'm one of those that's forgotten that. Although not in recent times, I don't think. I mean, we had a lot of coal, didn't we? That was just on the surface or something. I think I may be wrong. What do I know? I know nothing. 756 million tonnes of coal, 70% of the total production in US exports. Great job, Richard. Thank you very much. Mark Donny McLeod says, I've been listening in the background, Richard, and he comes over in some places as a prig. Yet in others, he seems to have the attitude of an early Labour Party member. Yes, I mean, he's obviously a self-employed person who has these commissions as authors used to do. You very rarely write things on spec when you're an author, and he would have been paid to go and make this book. He would have, his publisher and he would have come up with the idea, and he would have been a spokesperson, I suppose, and he obviously was, relatively well off and what have you, and he was driven about by some of it by his chauffeur. So he's had a chauffeur, that kind of shows you. So his attitude is in another world compared to the people who are, at the coalface, literally at the coalface. But as you say, I think he is, as he's travelled, I think he has been quite hit badly by looking at these places and being taken around these places, and was reflecting that in his writing within. I mean, I guess he wrote it after he probably took notes, but then wrote it up afterwards and started to sort of think how he felt about it and his place in it. And he starts off with Southampton being quite prosperous, and the cheap trinkets that are coming in from overseas, and the big ship vessels that he thought were very impressive, the liners and things that he thought were one of the best things that we'd been building at the time. And as he's further gone up north, he's seen more squalor and meanness and the misery of life and the hardship, and how industry, the industrial industry that sort of put us on the map, had suddenly slumped and fallen away from everybody. And then he's seen the great idleness and people who have never thought about doing anything different, or never had any opportunities for doing anything different. And I think he's sort of wavering about with his thought processes on the situation, and every region is different. It is fascinating, a snapshot. I mean, whether it's his point of view, of course, but we know that elements of that are all true. The southerner going up north to give advice and opinion is something I found is not appreciated for good or ill. No, I think anybody, giving anybody an opinion, it's an opinion, isn't it? And you don't have to listen to it. It's if it's a lecture, I think that's when it's. But everybody's got to accept that people come from different areas and different things. I don't know how that is now. Whether there's still I mean, we talk about the north-south divide and all of that, and softy southerners and hard-working northerners, and I guess there's still an element of that. But is there places like, this might sound a bit weird, but is there places like Pret-a-Manger in up north, and are there places like all these sort of naff? I mean, I can't bear places like Pret-a-Manger. I think they're horrible, overpriced, tiny little flapjack, all poncy and wrapped up in thing for people who've got nothing better. Give me a proper homemade flapjack. Give me some of Mark Donny McLeod's homemade bread, for instance. Much more than these sort of mean little slithers of something which we're all, full of sugar and everything, that we're paying 4 or 5 times the price you would anywhere else, and for a so-called stylish lifestyle, which is to me pretty meaningless. I hate all that. I hate those places. I think I probably got more. I don't know, more in connection with people who don't have that sort of life, that sort of fake, seems to me, affected lifestyle. I've been listening to the background. Oh, yes, I read that bit. Mark Dunning MacLeod, but the Midlander who loves the North is given honorary citizenship. Ben Reeve, in addition to our rich coal history, I believe the world's oldest continuously operation oil well is here in the UK at Kimmeridge in Dorset. Yes, not heard of that. That'd be interesting to visit. Keep debriefs on Julia. I think Priestley is a bit of a Ted. I don't know what's that? Tede. Tade. What? How do you pronounce that? No one seems to like us Southerners, says the lovely Julia. Oh no, they do. I think there's just sometimes different. I think the London set give Southerners a bad name. Personally, I think the cosmopolitan London fakery of supposedly not doing much work, sitting and earning fortunes from. I disagree. I think people do like people who are genuine. I think anybody who's, it doesn't matter where they come from, if they're just genuine and they're hardworking people and they're getting on with life, I think people connect with people. I think these are just labels that are thrown around, personally. Gran came across from Brum to Ashby de la Zeus in Leicestershire to Brum. Nice. Thanks, Rita. I'm really reflecting, Julia, from how I was told when I came up north. It's been a thing for many here to pull some working men's snobbery as a retort to the world. And yes, I can see that what he was saying there, J.B. Priestley, about the pitmen. They live in this subterranean world, and they come up back in 1933. I mean, quite how it is now with the pits closed and everything. And you can feel isolated. So anybody, it's that sort of old age thing of, oh, he's not from round here, is he? He's different. And I think there is that sense of people who come from a different place is just always suspicious. You're always suspicious of somebody who comes from, especially if they come with a completely different accent. And I think it's just easier to be able to go them and us, north and south. I think that's just something. Horses for courses, says Linda Kane, but I agree about Pret. Yes, I mean, even calling it Pret, I find is, I thought they're called Pret-a-Manger or something. So why can't we call them the name that they're given? But now we shorten it to this, Pret. Even that sounds noncy to me, personally. British food has a bad reputation here in Spain, Richard. Does it? It's a shame, because it is a shame. I think British food is nice. Different nationalities' food is nice. I don't really get it, really. None taken, just an observation from experience. The rest of us, the rest of UK dislikes the English, obviously, but ancient reasons. But somewhere, Southerners are least liked by the rest of England. Yes, I think that some Southerners just give us the airs and graces that or are seen to have airs and graces above their station. I don't know quite why that would be. Speaking of flapjacks, do you still have a recipe I gave you for Dutch babies? Because you could make Yorkshire puddings. Wait a minute. Yorkshire puddings and flapjacks are two very, very different things, especially in the UK. It's a great thing we are all different, which is brilliant. Sounds cooler and ready to eat, says Linda Kane. What's that? From Pret-a-Manger. I think it's just, to me, when somebody says Pret, it's one of those corporate people who say Pret. Corporate people who work for a large corporation. They don't think for themselves. They go into the office and there's office politics, and it's all a bit twee, and they have to dress in a certain way and behave in a certain way, and I think that sort of, and they all shop in Pret, and it's all very expensive, and they get their coffees with all this. It's like, Nancy hairdos in coffee with all the different, coffee is no longer coffee. It has to be interfered with and perforated and coiffured and have special type of creams and different flavours in it, to the point that the coffee part of it is actually an irrelevance. And I think, give me a proper, like an Americano, which is just coffee. It's just, black. Give me the essence of coffee. That's what I want from my coffee. I don't want all this other crap in it, because that's all fattening and it's all horrible and it's sweet and it's not good for you and all of that. Just give me the essence of stuff. I don't want all this fancy fakery in it, because you can't survive in this world with your Pretz. Ooh, it makes me squirm. It really does. Maybe I'm a bit odd. You don't get any French names here in Madrid. The French legacy was quite brutal under Napoleon. Oh, fantastic. Well, that would be good. A good thing. We should get shot of all this fakery with this French, on the menu. On the menu, you go in and at a high-class restaurant and they tell you that it's, what is it? The free-range eggs and this, that and the other, and something about the ham has been done this, and basically they're telling you it's ham, egg and chips. It's ham. So, you read all this stupid French nonsense and you go, well, what is it then? Oh, it's ham, egg and chips. Yeah, that's what I want. Just give me ham, egg and chips. Nice piece of ham, some nice eggs and some well done chips. That'd be lovely. Thank you very much. Short for pretentious. Oh, yes, absolutely. Audrey's got it. Yeah, pretentious. Absolutely. Cafe con leche is a wonderful here. Coffee with warm milk. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, coffee with warm milk is all right. I have no problem with that. I sometimes have that last thing at night. I believe Pret a Manger started as a community project that just grew and grew, says Nigel Sadler, into this pretentious load of old stuff. They probably have a go at me now. Well, of course, flapjacks are completely different, with what we call flapjacks pancakes. Oh, I see. Dutch babies are a souffle-style pancake. Yes. You see, flapjacks for us have got oatmeal in them. Oats. It's oats. You've got to have your oats. Hope to catch the Vojo. See you all. Have a good afternoon. Yes, time to go. Thank you very much for joining me. We've been waffling on. Take care. Thanks for going. We'll be back again tomorrow morning. And you're the salt of the earth, Richard. You tell it how you see it. I do. And I'm a softy southerner too. So, I'm obviously in the wrong part of the world. I think my mum has traces of Lancashire and Birmingham Midlands in her, actually. So maybe that's where I get that from. But there we are. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I will catch up with you later on and tomorrow. Yes, that's what I meant. You might not be receiving any sizable donations from Pret, says Nigel Sadler. I don't want any donations from Pret. Do you mean Pret a Manger? Is that who you mean? I don't know who this Pret. Such a horrible word, Pret. All that good Ponzi crap. Rather the lack of what I found refreshing moving north, but I have become a northern working class snob. I hope not, but here is now, and a big way, I do miss rock salmon. I don't know what rock salmon is. Anyway, I'm off. Take care. Nice to see you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.